Dear friends, welcome to the first topic of operations management. It's an introductory topic wherein we will be talking about operations management, what operations management is all about, what it deals with, and how it contributes to operations. The minute we talk about operation, the first thing that comes to our mind is a surgery or a military operation like a surgical strike which was conducted by India, or any other activities which are actually conducted with an objective in place, with wherein we want to achieve a certain objective. Every operation will have multiple activities which are a part of it. These activities will be sequenced one after another so that the final objective is being achieved. Operation has been defined by various people in different ways. I have put across a couple of uh, definitions here in the presentation for you for a ready reference. First definition basically talks about it is an act or instance, process or manner of functioning or operating. Here, this definition we can say it gives you an object, the main part of the operation, but it misses on to the important aspect which talks about the objective. So all the activities functioning, the processes, they all are aligned in such a way that they lead to the achievement of the objective. The third definition talks about a process of a practical or mechanical nature in some form of work or production. So operation can also be looked at a work, a type of work which is being conducted. There are multiple ways how a specific work can be done, but what operations actually looks at is what is the best way to do it. When we talk about the best way, means the best way to achieve the objective. When we say the best way to achieve the objective, means we are actually looking at uh, effectiveness and efficiency of the process. That means we should be able to achieve the objective to the dot. At the same time, we should be able to achieve the objective with minimum resources used. Okay. We may also have objectives like having minimum wastages, which will talk about again efficiency, about increasing the efficiency of the resources. The processes are designed in such a way that the effectiveness and efficiency are enhanced. Uh, Surgery and military we have already talked about. So again, when we look at surgery, there are two aspects to it. One basically talks about a procedure aimed at restoring or improving the health of a patient, as by correcting a malformation, removing a diseased part, implementing new parts, etc. Here also there is an objective of improving the health of the patient, and the activities involved are correction of a malformation, removal of the diseased part, implanting new parts, or different other activities as applicable. When we talk about a military operation, again, there also an objective is defined, and all the activities are designed to achieve that objective. Uh, there are other definitions also of operations. One of them is operations are jobs or tasks comprising of one or more elements or subtasks which are performed typically in one location. But this is how it has been defined by businessdictionary.com. But operations are not limited to only just one location. They may be limited to one objective. Okay, so operations are at times, there are instances wherein operations have been performed at multiple locations in multiple forms. So I would say this definition is not completely correct, but there is another aspect also to it. These operations are basically, the minute we talk about what is the at times I have observed that people are using operation and function also. That means uh, synonymously, but in reality they are a bit different. But yes, at times it is being used. So people call it as production function, marketing function, HR function, finance function. These are some of the functions which every organization has. Okay, so what operations these functions are actually looking at is, collectively the objective of all these functions is to produce a product or a service for customer satisfaction. So everything is actually focused towards customer satisfaction at the end. Now, what operations management talks about is smooth functioning of all the different functions and ensuring the achievement of the final objective of an organization. Now, this, when we look at it in this form, that time we are actually referring to operations management in the form of business operations, which is a bigger subset. Where business operations are those ongoing recurring activities involved in the running of a business or the purpose of producing value for the stakeholders. Now, when we talk about stakeholders are many. It includes the employer, the employee, the society, the customer, the investors, and even the government. When we look at operations on a bigger perspective, we talk about business operations. When we are looking at synchronization between the production function and marketing function, production function and HR function, production function and finance function, that time we are actually talking about smooth business operations. All these functions are not working in isolation. They have a set objective, which is an organizational objective, and they all support each other in achieving the business objective. The marketing function will provide the marketing function will provide the inputs in terms of expected demand, uh, expected customer behavior, and what kind of product the customer may require. At the same time, when we look at HR function provides with the manpower, and also it looks after the well-being of all the employees within an organization. It not only just looks at the well-being, but also the skill set requirement and skill set replenishment. Uh, they are continuously involved in ensuring the smooth functioning of the organization in terms of human resources. The finance function basically takes care of the funds flow, okay, sources and application of funds. At the same time, it provides appropriate budget for different functions so that they all can function smoothly. So every one of them have a specified role in their own self, but at the same time, they all are working towards a common objective. Uh, I would like to request you to please go through a couple of videos which are basically provided here in the form of links. Okay, when you click on this, you will be able to see them. Uh, all these videos are actually available in YouTube, on YouTube also. So first one is I Love Lucy Candy Factory video, which is approximately about 2 minutes. It talks about factory setup in which Lucy actually goes to work, and it talks about the speed of manufacturing, how it is being done, and how it should be optimized. So whether we do also take into consideration the skill set requirement of the candidates, and of my employees, and accordingly do we do it, or we just look at it in human form, and only just look at how much products have been produced. So that's one aspect of operations, which it is a factory setup environment. The other one is a Ford Model T manufacturing, which talks about uh, mass manufacturing, how a production line is being used for uh, manufacturing the most talked about Model T of Ford, which has actually changed the entire business automobile industry. So it was an big thing in itself. Then Ford has also modeled, they have created assembly plant for B-24 Liberator Willow bomber planes, and this was done during the World War. So this is also a 7 minutes video which talks about the length, breadth, and the complexities which an operation can actually handle, and how what kind of role that a process plays. So if you have a very well defined processes, even uh, a bomber plane can be actually manufactured within an hour's time, which has millions of parts. Then we talk about an airport operations, which basically focuses more towards sequencing and sequencing of planes inflow as well as outflow. So that's a very interesting video. I would very much appreciate if you guys can spare some time to go through them. Then we talk about Emirates catering services, wherein uh, they are offering it to the customers uh, for airline customers, and this talks about what kind of complexities do they go ahead with, and the timelines within which they are expected to actually deliver. Okay, how do they plan, and how different that means if you talk about a requirement of one airline which is basically flying one route, the will be different as compared to a airline which is flying in another route. So customers who are moving different routes are having different requirements, and how do they operate, how do they keep themselves flexible enough so that they are able to switch over and deliver what uh, deliver a happy customer at the end of the day. uh, the last video basically talks about what is expected of an operations management training. So a video is related to an operations management training experience at Nestle and what they go through. So all these videos are small videos. I would request if you can just glance through, it will be quite helpful. Coming to next, till now we have been talking about operations. Now talking about operations management. When we say operations management, we are actually talking about the management of the activities which are required to for the achievement of your objectives. Now, when we talk about operations management, it has been defined in the form of as an area of business concerned with the production of goods and services, and involves the responsibility of ensuring that business operations are efficient in terms of using as little resources as needed, and effective in terms of meeting customer requirements. These definitions have been defined by IIM Lucknow people. It is concerned with managing the managing the process that converts inputs into outputs. That means operations can be seen as a system which has a conversion system, takes inputs, delivers outputs. At the same time, the outputs are monitored and relooked at so that appropriate control signals are provided to the control subsystem as well as to the inputs. This helps in defining the output better and ensuring the output is achieved as per our requirement. It is concerned with managing the process that converts inputs into outputs. When we are talking about inputs, we are actually talking about different types of inputs. Inputs is not only just in the form of a raw material, but also in terms of labor and energy. We can also classify inputs in two forms: transformed resources as well as transforming resources. When we look at transformed resources, that means the resources which get transformed from one form to another. For example, materials, that is raw material. It gets transformed from raw material to a finished goods or a semi-finished goods, depending upon the number of stages which you are going to go through. The information which is actually provided to the operation system and the customer. So inputs received from the customers, and at the end of the day, what you get is a satisfied customer. So your inputs could be in the form of raw material, information, customers. Okay, there can be others also depending upon the nature of the operation involved. The other aspect of inputs that we are talking about is the transforming resources. Uh, these are the resources which are involved in the transformation process, but they don't get transformed. Okay, so the facility which is being used, the facility could be in the form of a machine which is being used, or the area which is being used. Okay, technology which is being used. So those things, those they don't change. Okay, and the transforming resources, the staff, that is employees, which are actually working on it. The objective of every operation system is to ensure the efficiency of the business operations, resource utilization in terms of effectiveness and efficiency, increasing the content of the value-added activities, and ensuring the alignment with vision, mission, and market opportunities. When we look at operations as a system, the inputs can be further categorized into external inputs, market-related inputs, and primary resources. What we have been talking about when we talked about material and all, we were actually referring to materials, personnels. Okay, so capital also becomes one of the primary resources and the utilities which are being used. When we talk about market, we are actually talking about the information collected in the form of competition, customers' desires, and product information. Sorry. Uh, the external part of the inputs is basically which are external to the system. That means the legal system, the economic system, the social, and the technological system, which also influence your operations system. The outputs we talked about directly what is being the output in terms of the product or the service that we are actually looking at. But not only just that, there is an indirect aspect also to it, which is not a desired aspect of output, but it is a part which is always there. So either in the form of a waste or a pollution or technological advancements. As you keep working on a technology, you realize how better it can be used, and it also improves. So technological advancement not only just in the form of modifications which are being incorporated to the technology, but also in terms of the way the technology is being used. The conversion subsystem basically looks at physical aspects in terms of when we talk about manufacturing, locational services when we are talking about transportation, that means movement of material from one place to another, retailing, that is exchange services, storage services in case of warehousing. Uh, Insurance is another aspect which is very much into services, and government services like other examples which we can look at is uh, the, when we talk about farming, mining, construction, manufacturing, power generation. These all are physical goods producing operations. When we talk about warehousing, trucking, mail services, moving taxis, buses, hotels, airlines, we are actually talking about storage or transportation operations. When we talk about newspaper, radio, television, newscast, telephone, satellites, we are actually referring to communication operations. When we look at films, radio, television, concerts, recordings, these are related to entertainment operations. Retailing, wholesaling, banking, renting, leasing, library loans, these are exchange operations. So depending upon the nature of the operation, we can again categorize them or group them under various heads. What controls the operation system? It is the information, which is the most important aspect of it. Information in terms of the output, customer behavior, in terms of uh, inputs, in terms of system requirements. So information all around. Okay. This acts as the most important aspect of the feedback loop that we have seen it here. So information in terms of deviation from the output, information in terms of what kind of inputs are required, information in terms of fine tuning of the conversion system so that desired outputs are achieved. Operations in itself is not something a new concept. It has been existing since ages. One of the book basically from Wiley publication talks about from 1700s to 2000, whereas I personally believe that it is even older than that. If you observe the way operations have been, if we look at a business operation, the way it has been molding, so there was a time when uh, operations were being conducted in a standalone kind of, that means within a village or a society. But as it moves, as the trade increased, the boundaries reduced, and people started trading across the boundaries. So we started looking at mass or low variety operations, wherein people were looking at mass manufacturing, so that they are able to bring down their cost. So there the variety was reduced. Now again we are moving more towards mass customization. That means people want to produce the product in masses, but at the same time it should be very much custom made specifically customized to the customer's requirement. Okay, so in the initial stages, the focus was more towards factory management. It shifted as the requirement changes towards production management, and today it is actually operations management. So there was a time when people never used to talk about operations management. They used to majorly talk about production management only. But as services requirement for services grew, it took a shape from production to operations management. When we look at operations management, there are three very important aspects of it. One talks about planning, second organizing, and third controlling. When we talk about planning, we are actually talking about operation strategies, forecasting, product and process choices, operations capacity planning, facility location planning, and layout planning. Uh, Under planning, we also look look at scheduling of the system and aggregate planning. These things we will be seeing as we move along. And a very important aspect, that is operations scheduling. That means how the activities should be scheduled one after another so that we are able to finish them in the minimum possible time with minimum resources. Controlling basically looks at controlling the inventory, materials requirement planning. Okay, here we are also talking, we take the help of Japanese manufacturing concepts. We try to manage for the quality. Again, quality in itself is a, I would say, a topic wherein we cannot define it specifically in terms of uh, physicality of it, but if I have to define it, the best way to say is what customer wants is a quality product. Okay, if I am conforming to the customer's requirements, my product is a quality product. If I am not conforming to my customer's requirements, it's not a quality product. Now there is another aspect to it, is if my product is using a superior material, but because of that, if the cost of the product goes up and the customer is not willing to pay for it, then I cannot call it as a quality product, because if it doesn't sell, it is not serving my purpose. So it should be very much conforming to the customer's requirements, what customer wants and what he is willing to pay for. To achieve these, we and focus more on organizing in terms of job design, the production or defining the production or operation standards, and work measurement and work study. Work study is going to help us in terms of, again, looking at whether the method that is being adopted is the best method or we need to do something more about it. Operations can be seen at three different levels. One, a supply network level. Second, when you take up an operation within the supply network, so that's at an operations level. When we drill down further within the process, so that's a process level. So there we are actually looking at flow between the resources and we are trying to optimize the flow. The objective, when we talk about optimizing process level, we are actually looking at automation of the activities which are regular or repeating activities, which have very clearly defined inputs, outputs, and control points. Operations basically takes different shapes depending upon the volume that operations has to deal with. If the volume required is high, then the operations or the processes that we define should be highly repeatable, should be specialized, they will be capital intensive, and the per unit cost would be low. But at the same time, when we are talking about a low volume product or low volume operations, will be the repetitions would be less. Each staff member performs more of a job. That means not specialized only just in one area, but he will be more of an all-rounder kind of, less systematization and high per unit costs. When we look at operations, the other aspect is variety. If the variety or variation in the product required is low, that means our operations or processes are well defined. They would be routine, repetitive in nature, will be quite standardized. The products uh, would be the operations would be regular in nature and will bear low unit costs. When the variety is high, that means variation required by the customer or the variation required in the product is high. That means the processes or the operations would be need to be more flexible. They will be complex in nature. It has the insistence is majorly on to meeting the customer's requirements, customer needs, and high per unit costs. When we variety means the number of rather I would say different uh, variations which are required. For example, if I talk about a mobile phone, so I may require a different type of phone for an X category of customers and different type of phone for Y category of customers. Some customers may be willing to pay higher, some customers may be willing to pay lower. So in that case, if the variety is low, okay, my operations would be well defined, routine, standardized, regular. That means not much of a changes can be expected there in terms of the processes. Whereas if the variety is high, then my process needs to be flexible enough so that I am able to switch over from one product to another product while manufacturing. In that case, my processes would be more complex. Focus would be majorly on to meeting the customer requirements and making the products as per the need, and high per unit costs will be an byproduct, will automatically happen. When we talk about variation in demand, if it is low, that means the product is very much, the demand is very much fixed. For example, if we talk about a product like salt, okay, so the demands, irrespective of changes in the environment, the demand for those kind of products doesn't change. So it is practically stable. So when we talk about variation in demand which is low, so there the operations would be quite stable, would be routine, would be predictable, will have higher utilization, and will be will be a low unit cost. But the minute there is a high variation, the capacity needs to be changed quite frequently. Anticipation of demand will be very important. If you are not able to anticipate, you will not be able to meet the customer's requirements. So anticipation becomes an important aspect. Forecasting, uh, flexibility in terms of processes is required, because uh, as the volume or the as the demand volume changes, so automatically you need to adapt to the processes so that you are able to meet the demand. You need to be very closely in touch with the demand so that you are able to anticipate and make take appropriate actions in advance or in line with the changing requirements. At the same time, per unit costs will definitely be higher. When we talk about uh, visibility into the operations, okay, so we talk about time lag between the production and consumption should be time. In case of operations which wherein visibility is low, you will observe that the time lag between the production and consumption will also be there. The process would be very much standardized. It will have low contact skills. Majorly, it will be an automated process. At times, what is happening inside will not be known. Contact with the customers would be less. It would be more of a manufacturing and just giving it across. High staff utilization, centralized decision making, and per unit cost would be lower. When we talk about transparency or visibility across the processes, there the waiting tolerance would be very less. Satisfaction would be governed by the customer's perception. Customer contact skills are very much required, and received variety is higher, and per unit cost will automatically be higher. This is very much applicable in case of services. So there the visibility is higher, whereas when we talk about production or a product which is basically very much regular or generic in nature, in that case the visibility between the processes may be less. Operations actually play different roles. First is a role of an implementer, wherein it implements the strategy which is being suggested by the top management. So it acts as whatever that is suggested, what management wants to achieve, so it operationalizes the strategy. So as an implementer. Second thing is it supports the strategy. That means your operations is matured enough that you can define, that you can take up a different strategy, and your operations will be able to support. The third is wherein your operations are matured enough, and or rather I would say matured, not only just matured, but are in the driving seat. They are highly optimized. Now you can they can support, or rather they can also uh, define better strategies which can be taken up by the management. So that's a that is in the form of a driver. So these are the three roles which operations actually play, in the role of an implementer, supporter, and so driver. In case of implementer, it acts as a Mr. Dependable. In case of a supporter, it acts as the most appropriate support, and in case as a driver, it is the one which pushes you to innovate. In case of driver, it helps in developing long-term capabilities. It provides foundation for the strategy. When we look at it as a supporter, it supports your strategy and contributes to decision making. The four-stage model of operations contribution basically tries to explain these role. At the same time, it talks about relationship between operations capabilities and strategic impact of operations to an organization. In the initial stages, when you are able to just correct the worst problems, that means you are internally neutral, you are holding the organization back. That means it is only just trying to take care of the regular problems which comes. Okay, they've got a problem, they've fixed it. They've got a problem, they've fixed it. That is how it is actually going on. So that's the initial stage wherein any organization, it goes through all the 4 stages. So in the initial stages, they will always be in the stage 1. Once their operations start taking a shape, it starts moving towards the higher side. That means they become as good as competitors. Their operations are defined. Okay. Here, in this case, you start adopting the best practice out of all the practices that you have tried and tested. From here, at this place, it is only just looking at inward. That means the best practices within them. After that, they start looking outside and they start coming up, or rather they become the best in the industry. That means their operations are defined in such a way that they are best in the industry. So this is the place where your operations takes the supporting role, and it links strategy with your operations. The 4th stage is wherein it starts giving an operations advantage, and you start defining the industry expectations. You start innovating. Automatically, you become the industry leader, and others are following. Broad strategic objectives of for an operation applied to stakeholder groups. As we have already discussed, the stakeholders can be in the form of employees, shareholders, suppliers, as well as society. These are the 4 major ones which we can talk about. If your operations are well optimized, you will be able to increase employment for the society, enhance community well-being, produce sustainable products, and ensure clean environment. For your employees, it would be a continuity in case of their employment, fair pay, good working conditions, and personal development. For your shareholders, it would be economic value from investment and ethical value from the investment. For your suppliers, business continuity, development of their capability, and providing transparent information. Operations and decision types. Here, operations are basically uh, 3 different types of decisions can be looked at, or rather at 3 different levels. One is at the strategic level, tactical level, and operational level. Strategic level is very much at the corporate level. Operating is the middle management, and control is at the supervisory level, which is related to day-to-day activities. For example, when we talk about deciding labor cost standards for a new product, frequency of preventive maintenance, or new quality control acceptance criteria, these are day-to-day activities which are basically related to control. That means you are only just trying to achieve what you have been achieving earlier. So it is more about continuity, repeatability. When we talk about operating decisions, we are actually talking about the ongoing production of goods and services to satisfy the market demands and provide profits. Here we would be taking decisions like deciding how much finished goods inventory to carry, what amount of overtime to be used for the next week, and details for purchasing raw material next month. We will, even when we talk about payment terms, who would be your suppliers, all these things will be basically your operating decisions. Now, whether you want to have a single supplier, multiple supplier, whether you want to operate from a single location or multiple location, so these are decisions which are strategic in nature and are covered under strategic decisions. Examples that I have indicated here is the design for a new product's production process, where to locate a new factory, where to launch whether to launch a new product development plan or not. Challenges which are addressed by operations. Before we do that, this table indicates exactly what all areas are covered under strategic domain, tactical, and operational domain. Okay, you will find overlaps also. Okay, but when we talk about overlaps, there are different things. Again, internally they are also defined and have a separation there. Challenges which are addressed by operations management is the changing demand for the quality products or services, lowering cost of the services, many options and varieties which are coming to the market either because of the competition or changing customers' requirements. Uh, Again, new service innovations, environmental impact. This is something which is actually becoming quite important nowadays, and people are focusing more on this. Political and legal pressures, rapidly changing technologies, security alerts, changing needs, taste, and preferences of customers, and many more. We'll stop here itself before we start this different type. We'll talk about processes in the next video. Thank you very much.